In a free democracy, it is not up to unelected security officials to dictate to political parties who can or cannot run.
Hey, March 1st, 2023. We're talking about the Chinese election assistance, Chinese election interference, but really what's happening is they're assisting with certain MPs to make sure they get elected. And what's going on with whatever it is, Han Dong, the Liberal MP, that's CSIS, our Central Intelligence Service, warned Trudeau that he has connections to the CCP, the Communist Chinese Party, the Chinese Communist Party. But of course, Pierre, in his recent press release, didn't want to use that slang. He was so afraid of Trudeau now calling everybody racist who questions everything, and he called it the Beijing Communist Party. Wow. I noticed Maxime Bernier pointed that out, because when I was reading the letter about requesting a public inquiry into the Chinese election interference, in the letter from Pierre, they would not write the Chinese Communist Party. He wrote the Beijing Communist Party and then CCP. And Max kind of quoted about it. It's like, Pierre is being so woke. He's so afraid of being called an anti-Asian racist, because that's what Trudeau says in his speech that you're going to hear today. Essentially, people use the term racism to end the conversation, and Trudeau was getting some hard questions by his paid media, and he couldn't take it anymore. So then in the end, he brings out today, since the pandemic, there's a lot of anti-Asian racism going on, and we're super happy to have Han Dong in our MP, and just because CSIS says that we shouldn't hire him, well, they're not elected politicians, so we don't have to do what they say. It's just a recommendation. And when I started to think about what's going on here and how terrible this is this actually could be one of the biggest scandals, one of the biggest liberal scandals, the biggest Canadian scandals in recent decades. And Han Dong is only one of 9 MPs who has taken money from the Chinese Communist Party, the Beijing Communist Party, according to Polyev. And so Global News, this paid for MSN, is now starting to tell the news, because I think they're actually had enough almost, and even though they're paid by the government, they're all these grants. They're getting tired of Trudeau's bullshit, and so they broke the story apparently on the 9 MPs who received money from and it's just in the local Canada, the Beijing, the Chinese embassy constituents. They gave money, and we're talking a lot of money. I mean, $200,000, and that's a lot of money for me. I can go buy a lot of dirt bikes for that, even a lot of KTMs and side by sides. And what's worse is it's not just the money; they're also taking these students on work visas and coercing them to go vote for Han Dong in the election that happened for him, saying you need to get on this bus and go vote, or your visa might end suddenly. So he's doing coercion tactics to get voters. They're putting old folks on buses, and they're writing who to vote. You gotta vote for Han Dong on their hand, on their arm, so they can remember. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous and terrible, unethical, unprofessional. A neglect of duty as a politician, trying to become a politician at that point. And then Trudeau's complete neglect of duty by hiring an individual that CSIS says has ties to the Communist Party. And Trudeau, of course, you're racist. You're racist. We're not talking. You can't even ask these questions. That's a racist question. And so what happens when we start to hear the next name, number 8, number 7, number 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? This is going to blow up huge. This is absolutely ridiculously terrible. I don't think people realize the mass amount of election interference and neglect of duty by our prime minister. This is absolutely on top shelf oppressive neglect of duty. Absolutely. I'm just using these police terms now since my studying for the Conrad Herb's next trial on March 29th in Kelowna. And yeah, so anyways, let's go to the footage of Trudeau, telling everybody we're not talking about this anymore.
Fakir Bey here from CP. The Security and Intelligence, and this question is for the Prime Minister, the Security and Intelligence Threats to Elections Task Force evaluation by Jim Judd after the 2019 general election said the government should consider activating its election interference warning system, not just during the next election campaign, but also in the pre-writ period before the election. Can you talk a little bit about how the government responded to this specific recommendation? Did it see why it was so important, and did it consider it?
Thank you. As you well know, in the run-up to the 2019 election, Canadians had already seen, from challenges to democracies like France or the United States, the role that foreign interference was potentially playing and a potential threat to our democracies. That's why in Canada, in early 2019, we stood up both an intelligence task force and a high-level panel consisting of top public servants to be able to ensure that the integrity of our elections is not compromised by foreign interference. Good news, obviously, is that they determined that both in the 2019 and the 2021 elections, our election integrity held. That doesn't mean that we are not faced on an ongoing basis by attempts at interference in our democracies, both during and before and after and ongoing around the writ period and otherwise. That's why we're continually improving and learning how to better keep Canadians safe and to keep our democracy safe. After the 2019 election, which was the first time we stood up the panel, there were a number of recommendations that we moved forward on. And after the 2021 election, there was another report, this one written by Maurice Rosenberg, that has been released to both the government and to the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, and I'm hoping that they're going to be launching a study on how best we can protect our democracy in the coming months. We will always look at the recommendations made, and we will always continue to step up on keeping our citizens and our democracy safe. It's extremely important, and we will continue to do that.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Laura Stone, Globe and Mail. Calls are growing for a nonpartisan public inquiry into China's attempts to interfere with our elections. You used to call yourself transparent by default. Why are you so resistant to calling such an inquiry, and are you at all open to the idea of holding a public inquiry into this very important issue for Canadians?
I think it's a really important and great thing that Canadians are so interested in ensuring that our principles of democracy and our practice of democracy continues to be protected from the ongoing interference as attempted by authoritarian governments around the world, whether it be China or other countries like it. This is why, a number of years ago, we put in place important mechanisms so that our top security officials could analyze what's going on during the elections and otherwise that could impact our democracies, and so that our very top public servants, in an independent, nonpartisan way, could ensure that the integrity of our elections holds. They did that in 2019 for the very first time and reported that it held. They did that again in 2021. And the elections report, the report on that task force has been delivered to the government recently. We actually sent it along to the National Security Committee and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, and we're hopeful that they're going to embark upon a study of that very quickly to look at how we can continue to do things. But you're absolutely right. The Canadians do want to hear directly from independent experts on the safety, the stability, the security of our elections and of our democratic processes, despite the ongoing attempts at interference. That's why this week, at a parliamentary committee in public hearings, our National Security and Intelligence Advisor, along with the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, David Morrison, who was himself on that committee in 2021, will be testifying, among other top officials, publicly to a committee of the House of Commons on what is going on and what happened and what further methods are going to be taken. It is extremely important, as you say, that Canadians see that this is open, transparent, nonpartisan, independent, because we're all concerned and worried about our elections' integrity. And that's why we have put in place mechanisms, why we continue to see hearings on this in parliamentary committee, why we continue to be open and transparent, because yes, openness and transparency is extraordinarily important for our democracies and for active defense of our democracies.
Next question.
Afternoon, Prime Minister Catherine with Global News here. Were you, your office, or any Liberal Party staff ever warned before or after September 2019 election about CSIS concerns that Mr. Han Dong was suspected to be involved in the People's Republic of China foreign interference? And if the Liberal Party government was warned prior to the 2021 election, why did the Liberal Party allow him to run?
Let me start by being very, very clear. There are 1.7 million Canadians who proudly trace their origins back to China. Those Canadians should always be welcomed as full Canadians and encouraged to stand for office, to get involved in their communities, and to take on part of the leadership of this country. That's one of the great things about this country. Let me say that we are extraordinarily lucky and happy to have a member of parliament like Han Dong in our midst, serving his community, serving our country alongside Chinese Canadian MPs from different parts of the country, alongside an extraordinary diverse group of MPs who are proud Canadians even as they trace their origins to elsewhere around the world. And that is as it should be. It's also very important to highlight that we have national security and intelligence agencies who are there to protect all Canadians of all different origins, as well as our democratic processes. And we always engage with them and listen to them. But let me also be very clear to a really important point that I think some folks are choosing to overlook. In a free democracy, it is not up to unelected security officials to dictate to political parties who can or cannot run. That's a really important principle. We, of course, draw on the expertise every step of the way. But the suggestions we've seen in the media that CSIS would somehow say, no, this person can't run or that person can't run, is not just false, it's actually damaging to people's confidence in our democratic and political institutions.
Last question.
Hi there, Lorenda Redekop from CBC. Prime Minister, just a follow-up on that question on CSIS and Han Dong. Are you saying that they didn't warn you, or were you warned and you chose to dismiss it for those reasons? Just wanted some clarification.
Once again, one of the things we've seen, unfortunately, over the past years is a rise in anti-Asian racism linked to the pandemic, and concerns being arisen around people's loyalties. I want to make everyone understand fully that Han Dong is an outstanding member of our team, and suggestions that he is somehow not loyal to Canada should not be entertained.
Are you listening to this? Questions about the integrity of our elections and Hong Dong taking money from the Communist Party should not be entertained. You know, you're racist if you ask these questions. If you question his loyalty, if you question our loyalty, if you question money that we're getting from the Communist Party, you are racist. These questions should not be entertained. We're not even going to entertain these questions. That's the end of the conversation. You are an anti-Asian racist.
He is somehow not loyal to Canada, should not be entertained. Much of what CSIS actually does in keeping Canadians safe involves protecting various diaspora communities from influence of authoritarian governments around the world. We will continue to make sure we are working with CSIS to make sure that as every MP serves their community, that they do so in a way that they are kept safe and that is true to the Canadian values and the Canadian principles that we all stand by. CSIS is active in fighting against foreign interference, and part of its tools for doing that is making sure that political parties and individual politicians are alert to the potential influences they may be faced with. That is something we will continue to work closely with CSIS on as we move forward, because not just our democracy needs to be protected in an abstract way, but the individuals choosing to serve their communities, who may be seen as greater targets for various countries, need to be protected as well, and that's what we work with CSIS on.
Thank you. That will conclude today's press conference. Merci. Ça va mettre
Merci
fin à la
beaucoup.
conférence de presse.
Thanks, everyone.
It is so difficult to accept that we have to listen to Prime Minister Trudeau avoid the question over and over and over. I can't believe this is what we're living in. This is worse than a video game. Like, even in a video game, if you ask a question in Final Fantasy, the character is going to answer the question in some direct way. His gaslighting of these questions is out of control. I can't believe this, guys. This is nuts. It is nuts that this guy is leading and dictating the way we live, controlling us, along with the controlled opposition of Pierre, which it appears to be. This is insane. How could this happen? How can this be? How can we not just throw this guy out of office? He won't answer the question. He just blabbles around. Yes or no? Did CSIS give you warning about Hong Dong, about his ties to the Communist Party before you hired him? Did you know about the election interference before the vote of the 2019 and 21 election? Did CSIS warn you? He won't answer the questions. I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe we're living in this country where people watch this shit and we can't do anything about it. And then I meet all these liberals in the freaking hot tub, in the public hot tub, and they have no clue because nobody's, only us, only you guys and me and the people that watch news stuff like this know that Trudeau is gaslighting every freaking question. It's so frustrating. I was in the hot tub the other night and there was two guys visiting, and guess what? They work for the government. And they're staying, visiting the area of the Okanagan because they are recruiters for the Canadian Armed Forces. And so I kind of like asked them some questions. It's like, so what did you think about the Emergency Act public inquiry? And they're like, well, I think people are entitled to their opinions. So they're just in the middle line. They're like, yeah, people are allowed to protest, but I also, I don't mind him using the Emergency Act. And I don't mind because I'm getting paid and I don't care and I don't pay attention to anything. And then I got into the Ukraine. I'm like, so Canada is typically a peacekeeping country. Why are we in the middle of the USA and Russia? Why are we in the middle of this potential nuclear war? Why are we involved at all? And he's like, well, Canada's not really a peacemaker country at all for decades. And, You know, it's, you know, we're part of the NATO alliance, and, you know, so we need to be there, and we need to send our 4 more tanks to make 8 tanks total. And I asked him, like, how many tanks does Canada have of these, whatever they were called, the Tiger 2s? I can't remember the exact name now, it's leaving me, but he says we have 84 of those tanks. Well, we had 84, so minus another 4, that's 80, and then minus the new 4 that they just announced, so that's going to be 76 tanks in Canada. So around 60 are in the Edmonton base, 20 are at the school, the tank school in Quebec, Ontario, at the border there in Gatineau, or not Gatineau, but Gatetown or something. And then there's another like 10 maybe in Vancouver, or whatever he explained it. So that's the division of our army. The Leopard 2 tanks. And I asked him, like, you know, what do you think about these tanks that Canada bought, you know, whatever they are, 20, 30 years old. And, you know, he's like, oh, he thinks the tanks are great. And so one of the guys was a tank operator before he became a recruiter. And he actually said the tanks can go up. He had them on the Autobahn when they went down to go, for whatever reason, they were on the Autobahn. He says, I got them up to 105 kilometers on the Autobahn. They all have rubber tracks. They leave rubber tracks on full time. So just rubber is spaced on all the tracks. And I asked him, like, so when we sent those first 4 tanks, did you send equipment and spare parts and all the things, the maintenance? And he says, yes, they sent pallets of all the spare parts and maintenance procedures and a personnel team to teach them about the maintenance, because apparently every 4 hours of go time, essentially using the guns, using the tank, whatever, every 4 hours you need 10 hours of maintenance. So, like, you know, this is a massive, but it was so frustrating. And I'm like, these guys are pro-war. They're getting paid. They love it. They're going around trying to recruit more army guys, and they're so pro-war. They're happy about that Canada is in this war between NATO and Russia. Oh, we're part of NATO. And I'm like, oh my God. I just wanted to punch them in the face. It's so ridiculous how these Canadians are warmongers like Trudeau, working for the Canadian government, suckling at the teat, getting paid to go to all these different hotels to go recruit more people. And I asked him, oh, what's the pay for the first, it's a 3-year program, 3-year minimum you have to sign up for. It's like, oh, $32,000 a year. And I'm like, oh, so you're in poverty working for the army training. And he's like, no, they don't have to pay for rent. They get supplied housing, supplied food, supplied everything. The only thing they got to pay for is their cell phone bill. And otherwise you can sign up as an officer if you have a degree, and then you'll start out a little different path, maybe a little more money, like 50 grand or something. I don't remember that number. But the whole point is you have these guys working. So many people work for the government under Trudeau. He literally doubled or something like that the employees of Canada that work for Canada government. So when everyone works for the government, we pay so much more money. The people who don't, and the taxes all go to these government employees, double time, triple time, quadruple time, for jobs that really don't do anything. Just more people suckling at the teat, and that's how the communist rule will continue. But it was just so I wish I could remember all the details, though, because I wish I had notes to take down when I was asking these guys the questions, like, why do you support this war in Ukraine? You know, it's like, don't you know any of the history of Ukraine? You know, they're oblivious. They're out there recruiting people, and they don't even know about the Maidan coup in 2014. They don't know how the U.S. instigated. You know, they took out Klavetsky, the elected prime minister, president, because he doesn't work with the West. He doesn't go with the terms. And they put in a boxer during the nationalist coup. They put in their choice of leader, unelected leader. And then Zelensky was the next fake election after the coup, you know. So it's just a U.S.-run country. And my mind is not getting the facts right now. But anyways, guys, I got to go dirt biking today. The sun is sorted out, cloudy day, it snowed. I got my studs. I'm ready to go riding March 1st, 2023.